It is another fantastic day here at Fun King Garage, and today I am back working on the Fairlane. Yes, again, because it's not done, and we are 1 week away from leaving for Power Tour, so it's got to get done. Today we're going to get that crossmember put up in there, get all the welds burned in, and maybe even have a chance to run the suspension through a full range of movement. So when I'm building something that needs to be square, what I like to do is I like to take 2 framing squares left over from a previous life and a couple of C-clamps and make a jig the width that it's supposed to be, and that allows me to set it in here and make sure, 1, that it is the width that it's supposed to be, and 2, that it is square all the way up and all the way up. And once I know I have square, I can go ahead and tack weld that in. It should also be noted that I know that this is at least a 1/2 inch wider than it truly needs to be, but that's so I can cut it to fit. Yeah, I know that sounded bad. It's because I'm at the end of my lead. I started a little too far away. That should be good though. That should hold it long enough to get everything cut to size. Probably should have moved this piece of aluminum before I welded steel, but I need to get them cut to size, fitted up, and up into the frame. Alright, so I did raise the car up another notch and I still hit my head. I got myself on the leaf perch back there. I've set these just temporarily. I put 2 tack welds on these ends to hold it. I'm going to try and TIG weld these. And I say try because I don't really know how to TIG weld. That axle is at ride height. This frame is not at ride tilt. It's fairly level right now because of being on the lift. Did want to check. It's pretty level though. I mean, it's just barely more on one line than the other. Maybe going shopping today for some flap discs. This undercoating is doesn't grind very nice, but it eats up the flap disc wheel. To be fair, these are all old and worn out. I don't throw them away until I absolutely have to. I don't know that those rivets were in the way. I just wanted to clean them up because they look terrible. What set of holes these link bars connect to? I kind of wanted them in the bottom ones. But it talks about measurements from the upper ones. Now listen, don't laugh if my tack welds give away on these bars. Make a lot of rackets. Some people pay for a gym membership. I just build cars. And I just hit my freaking head again. Should be no more than a 1/4 inch under the frame on each side, based on calculation. Oh, did you see that amazing catch with my elbow? Well, it would be perfect in the top holes if it was where it is right now, but I actually need this to be up in the frame. This is entirely too low. But it's looking really good, isn't it? I think now is the time to figure out exactly how wide the frame rails are. I know approximately where it's going to be sitting, and I can get the new blocks on the Crossmember cut, and we can get that thing up in the frame. My original thought on cutting this was to cut it over on the new bandsaw, but I have such a hard time keeping the top and the bottom cuts the same that this needs to be more precision. So ooh, that's some thick stuff. Ooh, another battery. Might have to bring out the corded monster. That's hot. I'm gonna try my little air die cutter. Wondering if that diamond blade's not wearing out. Had it for a while. Man, those work so much better. I'm afraid I'm gonna sling sparks at the camera though. I'll be looking at all my junk in the background. Now let's hope it fits. So the Crossmember is just slightly too large. Like I need to take a 1/16 of an inch off of each side, which again, I cut it intentionally a little wide so I could sneak it in there. So I'm gonna grind a little bit off of each side to do so. But I was out of belts. My belt was pretty worn out on my belt sander, my belt grinder, but also I wanted to grab some flap discs. So I just grabbed two. These are Diablo brand and they look pretty aggressive, so we'll find out. These were $8 a piece. But in the process I found some 1x30 inch belts for my little belt grinder that they were on clearance for only $4 for 3 different belts. So score to me. Yay, Home Depot. All right, now it's a matter of keeping that thing square. I have this roller back here set to be level. Just gonna kind of sneak up on it so that we don't take too much. Well, this side's nice and square. All right, let's see how we did. 36.5, which is where I believe I need it to be. It's still about a 1/16 of an inch over on the top side. I'm gonna fit it. It's so close, it's so close. All right, I think I'm gonna have to make friends with those guys over at Ameribraid. Get a proper belt grinder. Alright, where are we at? Oh, it's so close. Talking paper thickness. I think I'm going to give it a little bit with the angle grinder and the flap disc, just to knock it down faster. I say I'm tempted to put my hand on the back of this and push together like this. But I would only do that for a moment because it would shred my hand off. For those of you who aren't familiar with these, the back of this is disc or belt 2. There's no guard back there. Let's see if that made any difference. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, I'm gonna run it in here just to make sure that we're squared off. It's a 50 grit belt. It was the most gritty they had. I'd like to have had a 36, but it was not an option. 6.5. 36.5. Go test fit it. All right, at this point, it is so close that I feel I could very easily use those jack stands to push it up into place. And I think that's the way that I'm gonna go. Because I think if I get it up in there and it's not right, I can tap it back out with a dead blow hammer. So right now, both of these are maxed out. I don't know that I'm ready for it to be up in there permanently yet though. I still have to make a cap for the other side. I think I'm going to take a quick time out and cap the ends of these so that if I get these up in there, plus I need to bevel, make sure I bevel these, get it prepared, because if I get it pressed up in there and I can't get it out, that wouldn't be good. So what I've decided to do is I took this piece of 1/8 inch flat bar and I cut a piece off and I tacked them together, and I used a hole saw to punch a hole in the middle of those two. And now what I'm going to do is cut them to size to fit, and I might even weld them on first, then cut them to size, but we'll figure that out. But that brings me to advice from Glenn. Listen, if you have ever had the desire to learn to weld, do it. There is, well, maybe a few things, but there's not too many things that are more magical than being able to stick two pieces of metal together. It just, hobby-wise, it opens up so many avenues. Stuff like this, if you don't know how to weld, do it. Start with MIG. You know, people will tell you, oh, learn to arc weld before you pick up the welding glue gun. Don't listen to those people. Take a local course at a college if you want to, but go buy yourself a cheap welder. Go to Harbor Freight, buy a welder. I use a Hobart, and it's a great little welder. I bought it used because I had an old flux core. So if you've ever had the desire to know how to weld, just do it. Do it. Do it. Okay, so this is what I started with, and this is what I decided to do with it. So it's like a little blocky here, but that's going to have weld all the way around it anyway, so I think that turned out pretty good. Looks like a solid piece. I decided to go ahead and weld this completely up. My welds look like a 4-year-old Chinese guy did it, but nah, they're not so bad. I probably put a little more weld on there than was necessary. It is still hot, but I thought if I got it up into the frame and it was good, I didn't want to have to take it back out. There she is. A little cleanup on aisle 5 and it's good to go. I'll go ahead and take care of the other one and be back. 2-leaf spring brackets gone. I do still need to clean all this up and then I'll reprotect it, but it's time. And if that crossmember is not cooled down by now, we got bigger problems. Slight warmth. That's where she's going to sit. Well, I mean, not there, but distance-wise. She seems to be sliding in there. A little tougher than I could have done by hand, but now according to the instructions, this is supposed to sit 5/8 inches below the top of the frame. But again, that's not for this car. So I'd like the bottom of this at least to be even with the bottom of the frame, and then I can gusset the back side of it if I need to. Kind of like where that is. I can get a bead of weld around it. But what I need to know is where are we to the frame. And for that, I like the big level. Actually a little higher than the bottom of the frame. So that's pretty good. Right now it's about a half an inch. It's about a half an inch higher than the bottom of the frame. And there is pretty good clearance right here. I could bring that up. The only thing is I don't know if you guys can tell, but these bars are leaning down. Let's see what kind of angle we're playing with. 4.2. Oh, and then the other issue is this rear end needs to pitch back. It's leaning forward right now. And I would rather pitch that back before I start adjusting these. All right, let's see how big of a nightmare this is going to be. Oh, she walks right out of there. That is about the tightness that I wanted too. I now have my angle set to my 2.3. 2.3, that's exactly where we want it. That matches both the front of our engine and the transmission output shaft. All right, let's stop there for just a minute. Again, we're starting to slope our bars down. And we may not beat that. We may not get around that. Let's make sure this guy has stayed where it's supposed to. It is not. But that's okay. It's okay. We'll get her there. I suppose once I get the crossmember up, I could tap, tap, tap it, and it'll take the pressure off. I know that this isn't perfectly scientific because there's variations in the frame, but it still tells me that we're at or above the frame. Now, of course, this big loop right here, I mean, you can't see anything. What are you doing looking over there? It's because you're always in the way. Why didn't somebody tell me my face is dirty? Yeah, I think I would rather have it up so that this bar isn't hanging so low. That's a good 2.5 inches off. All right. Upsy daisies. I could have cut these down a little bit, but that's all right. Oh, I'm so tired of hitting my head. Moving to the inside, the reason why across the bridge. Now I do have a fuel line running down over on this side, which is going to be fun. But you know, figure that out. Alright, I'm right to the top of the frame. Let's see what we got now. Only about a 1/2 inch. So that cross member is only about a 1/2 inch lower in the frame now. And unfortunately, that's as good as it's going to get. I checked all of the angles again, and then I checked them again, and then I checked them again. And we're good. So we have our 2.3 degrees on our housing. These ended up at like 6.2, but again, I don't think that that's super critical. The cross member is up a nice distance. I will have to cap these, but that's fine. I can put a gusset on there and make it a little stronger. I'm going to go ahead and tack weld those in now so that they don't move anymore. And I also have, you know, of course, the adjustment that I can do on the bars. They're kind of set in the middle right now. So overall, I think it's coming along quite beautifully. That's not good for it. I think at this point I've hit the hard part of the job. Everything has kind of come together now, but these upper links are going to be a challenge. I have tacked in the diff side, which it's going to take some work, but I tacked in the diff side bracket, and it's talking about keeping a certain height between the upper hole on this bracket and this bracket up here. I think the most critical thing is that the bars run in parallel. And so I'm using this guy right here to kind of try to figure out what that parallel looks like. I have about 6.5, 6.6, kind of fluctuates in between those two. So right about there would be those two bars being parallel. Now the instructions do say that the triangulation bars are left so you can cut them shorter. All the bars are left with no ends on them, but I don't really want to cut those shorter. I'm thinking I'm just going to cut the brackets. Bum, bum, bum. I'm thinking this is too much bracket for this car. I'd sure hate to cut it though and find out something different. I don't think this is the right angle anyway. Of course, my housing is different, and that might be what's throwing it off too. That's an interesting thought. I really want it to be against the tube, but it's leaning more out because of the way this bracket is made. The face of my housing is flat. It's a fabricated housing, which I ordered intentionally for stuff like this. So I don't want you to feel like I'm leaving you in the dark on this procedure, but for you guys to sit and watch me fumble through this for, I mean, it's already been an hour. Let me figure it out, and then I'll explain everything that I did. And hopefully if you're doing this to a Fairlane, I'll have enough information here for you, and if not, you know, reach out to me and I'll see what I can do for you. What are you doing? What are you doing sitting there? I gave you the answer. I gave you the answer in the last little rambling of what the problem is. I said it all has to equal out to 90. Well, it does. It has to equal 90. The frame runs like this. The axle runs like this. I need 90 degrees. So it dawned on me. This bracket, when I took a measurement off of it, is 30 degrees. 30 from 90, for those of you not good in math, is 60. I set my protractor here to 60, and I put it up there. Here's the problem. This is made to go across a piece of pipe like this. There's your 60 degrees. Mine is sitting on a about 1/4 inch thick, I don't know how to measure it, piece of face. There's your 60. So I need this guy right here, I need to trim this so that this drops to 60 degrees on the face of my rear end. I was afraid to cut this. I'm not afraid to cut this anymore. Wish me luck, and I'll let you know how it went. All right, I just wanted to drop in before I got too far and show you this is the bracket after modification, before modification. So I had to trim this much off of that tab, and I had to dip this to go around my housing. Now your housing probably different. This one has a 5/16 inch face on it. Came from Speedway Motors. So if you're using a different housing, you may have to adapt yours differently, but that's what it took for mine to fit, and it is a perfect 60-degree angle. Alright, so I'm shooting this freehand only because there is zero room up underneath here. No longer room for activities. But that's what I ended up doing with the two brackets. I will try to explain everything by the end. It's the next morning. I'm exhausted. My body hurts, but I'm excited. So I'm going to try running the suspension through a bit of motion. The way the jack stand is, I really only have like maybe 1.25 inches to come down, but I can run it all the way up. So I'm going to take these brackets out of the way and just make sure nothing's binding. Hopefully my tack welds hold. It's raining again here in sunny Florida. Well, it didn't fall off, so that's pretty good. Not that I really thought it would. Light something up. So the housing touches the trunk, the hump in the trunk. I may have to clearance that. Let's see how much space I have in there. I am 3¼ to the frame rail. I might have to massage that in a little bit. Not that I need that much travel. That's sufficient for travel, but air suspension, you know. My tires are 27 inches in diameter, so 13.5 would be half. Oh, there's plenty of room to have that much hammering. Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, so I think I'll take, when I take that axle down out of there, I will massage into the trunk just a little. It might be a little more beyond massaging. That may be a cut and replace situation, but so what did I say, 3¼ You don't want to compress that more than 3¼ which the RideTech Air Shockwave airbag shocks, I will only have at the most 3 inches of travel either way. So now that's compressed almost 4 based on the height of the frame. The frame actually might be taller here. That's about 4 inches of drop right there. Nothing's binding other than this jack stand. This crank on this is a little coarse. I think we've got it. I think we've got all of our angles perfect. That should be about 1¼ inch, 1.5 almost 2. 1¼ That's not almost 2. And looking at the way these are cut, I have a feeling that I could go quite a bit more. Now, my pinion angle is changing. It's not like a traditional parallel 4-link. Because these bars are shorter, I'm going to get some variations, but it's pitching less than a degree. But it ends up back where it's supposed to, angle-wise, so it's hard to argue with that. My arms are so tired. It's a lot of overhead work, and with my shoulder being bad, oh, I didn't sleep well, that's for sure. Oh, and I'm so tired of hitting my head. Alright, so there's no binding, and that's 3 inches. 3 1/16. So that is more than enough travel. It's really weird. So the shocks that were in this car, this is just a side note, the shocks that were in this car were like, you know, this long, because they went diagonally like this, and when you drop the rear axle, it just didn't seem like it was dropping far enough. It definitely wasn't dropping far enough to get the tire in and out, and it still may not be, but like when you drop that 3 inches, that feels significant. That pumpkin is definitely laying quite a bit more forward all of a sudden, but I think overall it's going to be fine. I would have absolutely preferred to go with a parallel bar 4-link. The problem with that is you need some kind of a pan-hard bar. In my case, would have had to have been a system like Ride Tex where it's diagonal, and that kit was just, it was outside my budget. So that's why I chose to go with the triangulated 4-bar, because I didn't have to have a pan-hard bar. There's just no space. I mean, I can just barely get my fingers between the gas tank flange and the rear end. There's just no room behind the axle on this car. And I didn't want to run into a situation where I just couldn't do it. Plus with the size tire I'm going to be running, I can't really afford any side-to-side motion in the rear end, and a pan-hard bar will cause side-to-side. Now, not the diagonal one like what Ride Tex does. It's actually, that's a pretty slick 4-link setup. Yep, and we're back. Beautiful. So, at this point, I feel fully confident to burn everything in. The stuff under the car is going to suck, and I still have some gussets to make. The axle stuff, I can take it out and take it over to the welding table and just rip away. And I'm thinking what I'm going to do is a little bit on the axle, back to the frame, a little bit on the axle, back to the frame, so I don't overheat the axle housing. Then, once all of that is done, I'll be able to cut and size the axles, and I have a super big surprise coming up as far as the brakes on this car, and I think it's going to be some very pertinent information for others out there, mainly if you're running a 9-inch or an 8/8. Yep. So that's the way I'm going to go. I don't think I'm going to film that whole thing. I might do a little bit of B-roll of me welding, but I'm not a professional welder by any means, and if you really want to watch welding, there's so much content out there to watch welding, and it's probably better than mine anyway. Alright, sorry about the noise from the rain. Can't control it, though I'd like to. Anyway, as you can see, the rear end has been removed. It is over on the welding table. I'm going to start burning in everything under the car, as well as that axle, and somewhere in the process I'll make some gussets. If something exciting is happening, I will be sure to come back and bring you guys in. Otherwise, I'm just going to get this done. So it was a long day of welding. Got a few burns down the old arms. I really got to get some welding sleeves. I also need a hood for the back of my helmet because I get a lot of light reflection in off of there, but that's neither here nor there. There is still a slight bit of welding to do, which would be to put this cross member in. However, this is the piece that I needed that square tubing for that they gave me the wrong size. It's fine. I'm going to work my way around that. Hopefully today or tomorrow. So much room for activities in here again. Wow, what a mess. Let me give you close-ups. So upon removing the rear spring hangers, I found some rot up under the frame on both sides. Makes sense, 70 years of that metal on metal contact, but overall everything is in and welded. I gusseted the back of these. They're crazy strong. And then all of the welding on the rear end. The kit did include these gussets as well, which are supposed to go up in here, which, because of the weld, they can't go all the way into the corner. My issue with these is I would prefer that they slope down like this so that junk doesn't lay on top. So I'm going to make my own out of 3/16 and not use these two at all. I'm going to use those for some other project. They're a little thinner, 10 gauge maybe, probably 10 gauge. I do still have to weld those link bars, but otherwise the only thing left is destruction. That cross member that's up in there has to come out. There is a fuel line in the way. This was hairy welding up next to that fuel line, but I put a piece of flashing over it to protect it. Otherwise, axle has to be put together now. The third member has to go in, the axle shafts have to be cut, all that will be sized. Then I can paint the housing, I can paint all of the suspension, I can paint underneath here to protect it. Gotta fix that stuff, but I don't know if that's going to be part of this project yet. But it has been a couple of really long days, and I'm feeling it. I'm definitely feeling it. So hopefully we'll get all this wrapped up soon. I know as of recent, these episodes have become longer than normal, but that's because there are so many hours of content that I'm trying to deliver to you without dragging this out forever. Though it feels like forever, doesn't it? Listen, one week until we leave for Power Tour, and I would like to get as much of this content to you as possible. So as you see, we got a lot done in this episode. The cross member's in, all the welds are in. The axle moves through its full range of motion and actually a little further with no problems. That is great news for me. That means in the next episode, I can finally build out the new rear end, get the axles cut and put in, get the third member installed, maybe have a functioning rear end in this car by the end of the next episode. Now, of course, at the point that you're watching the next episode, I'll probably be on Power Tour, but either way, I'm gonna try to keep the content coming to you. So, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and as always, a thumbs up is appreciated as well. So until next time, thanks for watching.